My name is Julie Baroh. I am the facilitator and the current owner of Krab Jab Studio, which is both a gallery and a working art studio. The show here today is called The Dark Woods, The Roots of the Fairy Tale. The Roots of the Fairy Tale was a concept that I started to think about. Primarily, it actually started as a conversation between myself and another artist where we were talking about a piece of work that came through the studio that was based on the fairy tale Snow White. The piece had a sensuality to it that made people uncomfortable. And we talked a little bit about that discomfort that's left the realm of the fairy tale. The darkness that is part of fairy tales that's been scrubbed out a little bit, especially when Disney came along. A lot of the slightly more sensual things, the darker things, the more violent things, and the more magical things have disappeared from fairy tales. The Dark Woods is a primal place, especially in fairy tales in northern and western Europe, particularly. The woods was the one place that, up until just very recently, man could not conquer. It was a place where when you went in, there was no light, there was no trails, or very little trails. Horses could not get through. Anything that man could tame and contain was lost within the woods. Animals were wild and they were hidden. Magical things happened. People got lost in the woods. There were robbers in the woods. There was danger in the woods. And in a lot of societies, there were magical spirits that lived in the woods. That was their domain. A lot of fairy tales oftentimes have the woods involved. They usually start where someone gets lost in the woods. Something comes out of the woods. Oftentimes, the savior of the day, for instance, with Little Red Riding Hood, happened to be a lumberjack, a woodcutter, a wood chopper that saves her. And things happen that are evil. You know, little ladies that eat children, children that throw little ladies into ovens. I mean, there's just a lot of things that happen within the fairy tale realm that we would consider now vicious, violent, nonsensical, that when spoken within the realm of fairy tale telling, somewhat often when you tell a story, you're talking to a part of the human being that's not an everyday entity. And so these things in that world do make sense. And with the artist, a lot of times we as artists and artists in general tend to like to tap into that. That's the realm of inspiration. And so working on this show was not only fun for me, but the artists themselves actually had a chance to really dig into stories that they found inspired them or touched them as children in a way that they would remember scenes from stories that sometimes were a little dangerous or bizarre or just magical. And some of them did pieces based on those various characters or various stories that inspired them in some way. Another thing that's very interesting with the work is it gave people a chance to go into a realm that they may not normally go. Particularly in the case of the artist Amy Brown. She was actually interested in doing this show, but she did not know what to do. And we told her to just work. I know she was interested in trying a couple of new things. She just didn't want her normal fan base to see them because she was worried that they wouldn't accept them. She sent us a couple of pieces, one of which was the one behind me, called Entitled. She did not title it. And then the one here called Just One Bite. She sent this both to me and to Sater and asked us what we thought, and we loved them. Primarily, they're so different from what she's done and they're so edgy. There's something about them, but neither of us could really pinpoint, but we knew that she was going in a really good direction, and we told her to continue doing this. The fun part about working with her, setting her up for this show, was we actually chose not to preview her work. We didn't want people to see what she had put into the show until they came here. Most primarily because people were actually taking a look at her work, and they really liked her work, not realizing that the name Amy Brown below it was the Amy Brown of the Striped Socks Fairy. Once they did find that out, it intrigued them even more so, particularly because it's so different, it's so dark, that in fact a couple of collectors sort of fought over these pieces. One was just so impressed with the new style that she's doing that he had to have them. He bought actually both of them. They're the first pieces that we've sold actually of the evening. And we're really excited about where she's taking this. And it really goes so well with the whole concept of the dark woods, because now she's going in this direction of the unknown, a place that makes her uncomfortable a little bit nervous about what might happen. But it's kind of thrilling at the same time. And I think that Amy in particular, I mean, all the work in the show is amazing. You know, Olivier's work is amazing. It's this beautiful graphite work right here. And he always displays the most amazing values and tones in his pieces. But Amy's in particular was such a treat to have, because we're watching an artist going into a new direction. And this is the first example of a direction that she's been toying with, and we get to finally show. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. And we're really looking forward to seeing more coming from this part of her. And I love when we put a show together that allows artists to explore an element of themselves that they've been wanting to explore, but makes them just a little bit uncomfortable. And it's a little edgy for them. It's a little raw. And particularly for illustrators, that can sometimes be a challenge. You're very used to pleasing people with your work, and doing something that's a little bit different that might not necessarily please people, but pleases yourself, is really the stamp of an artist to me. And it's neat to see professional illustrators take that leap, and particularly when it's very well received, to the surprise of the artist. That's one of the fun things about being a curator, is seeing this happen and watching it happen right in front of your eyes, and seeing the response of people, and watching the artist sort of surprised at what's happening, and a little overwhelmed. That's very exciting. So the show will be running all through summer, all the way into September 5th. The pieces that are for sale, all the pieces are for sale. Pieces that are sold actually stay here until the very end of the show. So these pieces will be available to view all the way up to September 5th. The other nice thing is we will have another opening on the second Saturday of August, which I believe is August 9th, from 6 to 9. We will have live music here, and actually we will have a few additions that aren't here right now, particularly a piece by Forrest Rogers. I've actually seen, it's stunning. It's a sculpture. And I encourage people to come down. We're open Wednesday through Friday from 1 to 5. You can come down, or you can set up an appointment with me if you go ahead and email me at Krab Jab Studio, and that's Krab with a K. So it's krabjabstudio@gmail.com. And we can set up a time for someone to come down. We do appointments because this is a working studio. I do have an artist and a writer who works here, and I am an artist as well. So there are times when it's not appropriate for people to just walk in. So setting up an appointment with me is the best way to come in and see the show, particularly if you want to see it and really get into it on your own. Some people like to be here without the crowds. That's the best time to do it. So I hope people come and check this stuff out and see it for their own eyes, because I think that they will find things in these pieces of work in person and up close that they may not have expected to see, and that will, I believe, thrill them with how these artists challenged themselves and tackled these images.